for 6 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the Majority Leader for yielding me time, and I also want to thank the Majority Leader, Kevin McCarthy, an honorary member of the Science, Space, and Technology Committee, for sponsoring this important legislation. This bill encourages the private sector to launch rockets, take risks, and shoot for the stars. H.R. 2262, the Space Act, facilitates a pro-growth environment for the developing commercial space sector. It creates more stable regulatory conditions and improves safety, which in turn attracts private investment. This bill secures American leadership in space and fosters the development of advanced space technologies. It preserves the Federal Aviation Administration's ability to regulate commercial human spaceflight in order to protect national security, public health, and safety. It also preserves the FAA's ability to regulate space flight participants and crew safety in the event of an accident. The Space Act allows the commercial space industry to develop standards and coordinate with the FAA so the industry can grow in a stable regulatory environment without the threat of arbitrary regulations that would adversely impact their ability to innovate. International law places liability for damages that result from space accidents on the launching country. All spacefaring nations require some form of third-party liability insurance for launching entities. The current U.S. risk-sharing structure expires in 2016. This act extends indemnification to 2025, and this provision prevents U.S. space companies from going overseas where other nations have much more favorable liability protection. The Space Act also closes a statutory loophole that negates an experimental permit once a launch license is issued for the same vehicle design. This fosters greater innovation and allows an experimental permit holder to continue its tests while a license holder conducts operations. Current law only allows for two categories of individuals carried on a spacecraft: crew and spaceflight participants. Now that NASA allows other astronauts to travel to the International Space Station, a new category is necessary to outline the roles, responsibilities, and protections for astronauts on a commercial human spaceflight launch. This bill closes a loophole that carved out an exception for spaceflight participants from indemnification coverage. By including these individuals in the indemnification provision, spaceflight participants who participate in a launch as a result of a contest or for other reasons are not exposed to liability more than anyone else involved in the launch. Current law requires that all parties involved in a launch waive claims against each other. This bill adds spaceflight participants to the cross-waiver requirement to ensure consistency and reinforce the informed consent requirements. Many bipartisan provisions recently considered by the Science Committee are included in this legislation. These provisions establish in United States domestic law that U.S. citizens are entitled to explore, use, and take possession of space resources. They also streamline the regulatory process for commercial remote sensing and update the Office of Space Commerce. Numerous space companies have expressed support for this bill. They include SpaceX, Virgin Galactic, Blue Origin, Worldview Enterprises, X-Core Aerospace, Mojave Air and Spaceport, Planetary Resources, Moon Express, Spaceport America, Spaceport Camden, Georgia, Midland Development Corporation, Masten Space Systems, the Satellite Industry Association, and the Commercial Spaceflight Federation, which represents more than 50 commercial space companies across the United States. This bill is the product of over 3 years of work, 14 committee hearings, multiple markups, a rule on the House floor that allowed amendments, and input from industry, education groups, and grassroots citizen advocacy groups. Virtually every space stakeholder group supports this bill, and in fact, it passed the Senate unanimously last week. H.R. 2262 keeps America at the forefront of aerospace technology, promotes American jobs, reduces red tape, promotes safety, and inspires the next generation of explorers. It provides the boost America's private space partners need as they lead the world into the future. Mr. Speaker, we have reached this point because of the persistence over many weeks of very able staff members. And I especially thank the Space Subcommittee Staff Director Tom Hammond, Science Committee Senior Advisor and Legislative Director Chris Weidler, and Chief of Staff Jennifer Brown for their work on this legislation. I also want to thank Majority Leader McCarthy again for his initiative on this bill, and I encourage my colleagues to support it. Now I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentlemen.